Thank you.
All right, we have one more presenter before our luncheon, and it's a good friend, and I might add, a Case Western Reserve University graduate. This is Manfred Franke. He's the founder and CEO of a real promising company. It's called NeuronOff, and I don't know, I heard there might be some breaking news reported today. I've just heard that rumor. So Manfred, do you wanna fill us in?
Thank you, Jim. He insisted on having the slides beforehand. I think he is cheating by saying there may be something. I'm aware that I am the one before lunch. I will try to make this very stimulating, but likewise calming. Bad pun intended. I'm aware. All right, so let's pull a couple things together. This is in part an update for the 2027 fundraise because we are recapping here where we are. We have a small injectable wire with which we are working to replace what right now is a steroid injection or a needle-based radiofrequency ablation for pain. We inject the wire is completely implanted, nothing sticks out, code 64555, 2 times, meaning $12,000 reimbursement is the target in the ASC. And then we have this stimulator on the outside. There's data from a clinical study, NCT number listed, where we implanted bilaterally, in this case, injectrodes on the dorsal rami. We stimulated the erector spinae muscles with that. This study was a non-significant risk study. I'm going to repeat, NSR. We did not require an IDE for an implantable device study. This is not our first NSR. This is not our latest NSR. And to tie this together, basically the goal is to replace drug injections, not just as an intervention, but also financially make this interesting to insurance companies. Because if you want to make neuromodulation a mass market treatment, you have to be cheaper than what current neuromodulation solutions are. I know Medtronic likes to implant fully automated BMW size, speed, price systems, fully automatic. We like to go a little bit simpler, cheaper, and earlier in the treatment paradigm. So what is the benefit of that? If you look at it from a access to patient perspective and democratization point of view, our goal is to enable clinicians to treat more patients. The way to do that is to make it cheaper for the insurance companies so they have an easier path to sign off on it, because then the clinician has less probabilities to have a peer-to-peer conversation. Now, I understand not everyone in here is a clinician. A peer-to-peer is when your clinician says, I would like to give you neuromodulation treatment because you've tried everything else. But I have to talk to another clinician for 20 minutes first, maybe 30. In those 20 to 30 minutes, I cannot treat another patient. So treating you right now means I cannot treat somebody else because I have to argue with another clinician. If I don't have that peer-to-peer, because my insurance company that have a different attitude on treating versus paying, my insurance company is going to approve something that is cheaper with a higher probability, will probably have an easier job if I provide something in the PNS space that comes along for the price of a trial, but can actually treat. So long story short, what it means is clinicians can treat more patients. Clinicians can treat patients faster at the table because time at the table matters. And for the patient, if you don't actually need to cut to put your device in, and at some later point to take the device out if you have to, then you are probably doing the very best for the patient to avoid scars. And what if we have a device that you can put in, take out very easily for the price of a drug, essentially? Well, at that point, you've got all the points ready for mass market adoption in neuromodulation. I will always go for non-invasive first. Don't get me wrong. Yes, I understand. I'm the CEO of a company that does minimally invasive with a small implant. But if it's my mom and I can do something with vibration or external stimulation, I will advise her to try that. If it doesn't work, I'll go minimally invasive. So what is it? We have this injectable device, the injectrode, comes out of a needle, 18 gauge, inner diameter millimeter, outer diameter 1.3. In funny imperial units, a 20th of an inch. From a clinical readiness perspective, we are what DARPA and NASA call TRL 7, Technology Readiness Level 7. We're preparing our 510K submission. and all the testing that goes into that. It's a lot. We have received, over there on the right, MRI conditionality label information, because if you put something chronically into patients that you may stimulate or may not stimulate, it's still going to be there. So it would be nice to know that this patient can go into the MRI machine without any risk, in this case, that up to 15 minutes, the typical in the PNS. Where are we on our way to market? So we have scaled manufacturing. We can, we were targeting about up to 1,000 systems per year at this point. Everything is done in Cleveland, Ohio, sourced within the United States. Tariffs didn't really affect us much. We do get platinum iridium for Heraeus, and sometimes that comes from Singapore. But so far, this is has not been a problem. We are looking to externalize pain at this point from NeuronOff as potentially a spin-out. I am in contact with potential CEOs that can run this as a pain-focused spin-out. And we are preparing a raise in a larger number of millions in this case, because the last one was a oversubscribed $4.5 million that got us to a total of 14 invested at this point, and obviously aided by about 9 million in non-dilutive funding. And yeah, we are preparing our 510(k) submission. But that leads us to the calming element to the story, because having been using the injectrode as a non-significant risk classified device in non-significant risk studies, we were approached by a clinician that works with individuals who've suffered spinal cord injury. And a major problem in spinal cord injury is neurogenic bladder, control of the bladder. And they basically asked, can I stimulate with the injectrode a nerve in the periphery and potentially treat neurogenic bladder? We said, okay, let's put a grant together. January of 2025, so just about 10 months ago, we got the information that, congratulations, the DoD approved your study. All right, so funding is there, study location is there, UT Houston, and now let's put all the elements in place. Well, it's been about 2 weeks. We received IRB approval. So we have ethics approval to implant the injectrode for up to 60 days into the body, 2 times 30 days, and provide a treatment for neurogenic bladder. We will collect on the tibial nerve early data to then confirm if we can utilize this device as an interface device in the same way as we do for pain. And I can only focus on one company at a time. So we have created Calm Medical. We needed a name, Calming the Bladder. And I like the idea in yoga, calm your body, calm your mind. I may have liberated that a little bit. And the mindset is basically, if you can provide a simpler, less invasive treatment, especially for individuals with spinal cord injury, they usually have healing issues. So you want to avoid major incisions because it doesn't heal as well. If you don't have the same amount of perfusion, then they've got a therapeutic benefit. So the plan is basically similar to what we've done in the picture on the right with the lower back, implant injectrodes. The image on the right shows day 0, that needle poke. And in this case, for that individual where we explanted on day 25, it was hard to see anything from a scar perspective in that individual. Also, they couldn't really feel, it was with the general perception where the device is located. So place the injectrode in an ASC type setting, and then use an external stimulator to engage it, and have a lot of measures of efficacy. So we can go back to the FDA at the end in approximately 18 months and say, we have strong tibial data from 21 individuals that is a randomized controlled trial with a sham to verify that we know if we affect and how we affect best. And last but not least, that we can power a pivotal study thereafter to then actually get a tibial interface approved from a platter perspective. I'm interviewing candidates that can take this over, actually. I have a conversation with CROs at this point that will help us run a sacral copy of that study, which is why we're actually fundraising for a sacral pathway as well. This is intentionally conceptualized as a angel round or small VC, I have actually already been approached with a soft commitment of about a quarter of what I need to raise. And yeah, goal is tibial data in 26, tibial and sacral data together in 26, 27, go to the FDA in 27 and get a clarity on IDE study design and what do we have to do to get this approved as a minimally invasive intervention. And we actually just set it live on LinkedIn, literally at the beginning of the presentation. So if you would like to look on LinkedIn, you are happy to share, like, you can find it there. And the website is obviously listed here. Thank you very much. Ready for questions.
All right, great talk. Any questions for Manfred, either about calm or about pain? Let me throw one at you. I don't know if anyone's ever asked you this. One of the strengths or one of the unique capabilities of your technology is the ability to explant readily that some of your competitors wouldn't have. Now, you and I know that's a great feature. Do you worry that some people might think, well, why would you need to explant if your product works so well? It should just stay in there. I'm talking about just, you know, the perception, if that's something that you've ever encountered.
So anything in biomedical engineering, what goes in must come out. Similarly with airplanes, what goes up must come down. He's a pilot, so that. But the basic idea is you do all the testing from a safety perspective for a limited amount of time that is the device is to be intended to be within the body. And at the end of that timeline, you have to, on label, define when the device is to come out. So no matter what, there is by this time point, this device has to be explanted. We have designed it to be capable of 10 years, but all the testing that we're doing that we can support with the funding will probably be an initial 2 to 3 year approval. For 10 years, if you model this mechanically, cardiac leads need to be bent on a specific bend test 8 million times to be able to function in the heart with a pretty high probability of about 2 to 3 years. All right, 8 million. So if you want to put this on the tibial and you want to run it for 10,000 steps for 10 years, multiply that out, it's 35.6 million bending cycles. We did that. The device didn't break, didn't show any negative signs, etc. So we know it's probably going to be able to do that, only to realize that there's two legs, which means we've done either 20,000 steps per day or we've done 20 years. But that fact aside, so if people are afraid of the question, why would you want to design it for explant? The idea is, at some point, a patient might say, I don't like what I have implanted in my body. I would like to take it out. And at that point, having something that is a small cut, grab and remove, or we have a grabber on a stick inside a needle that we can actually, like a diamond grabber fundamentally, grab the injector and then take it out of the body through a needle. That allows us to then, in the future, to say, okay, this is something needle in, needle out. Maybe we can provide a scar-free type treatment.
Yeah, thanks. That was probably a stupid question, but you know, it's psychological. Cirrus is an airplane manufacturer who pioneered a plane with a parachute. Well, that's a great thing. It's a safety feature. Well, wait a minute. If your plane's so great, why do you need a parachute? So anyway, that was kind of a dumb question. Anyone else who has a smart question for Manfred? Oh, Alejandro has a question.
Very interesting talk. Thank you very much. I was just wondering, how do you explant through the needle the scar tissue around the electrode?
So we designed the electrode and the lead to be a helix. And if you remember I think we're all old enough to remember telephone cables that are a helix. If you pull on them, not only do they stretch out, they also shrink in diameter. Which means if you actually measure the forces, this is from one biotech nerd to the other. If you measure the force and you pull on that lead, it peels off one loop after the other. So the big difference between our leads and Medtronic's leads, for example, is, I like Dave, that's why I'm pointing in his direction from time to time, is that their leads are attached to tissue, scar tissue all along the way. So you want to pull this out, the entire summation of all the forces from the lead detachment along the path are forces that you need to overcome. Whereas we unzip, we call it unzip like a zipper on a jacket, one loop at a time. And that greatly reduces the forces and also makes it very predictable, which means the removal experience out of chronic animals is something that clinicians have told us, this is very linear. It feels very positive. It feels very straightforward. There's no jerking motion. And that to a clinician translates to, I like it. And at the end of the day, this is actually where you want to get to, because then clinicians like the adoption of this because it eases their daily flow.
Helix is good. Anyone who knows the history of DNA, and I will add, if you're ever interested in the story of the first laser, Dr. Ted Bayman invented it in 1960, actually, at Hughes Aircraft. I was just a little kid. I was not working there, but I got to meet Ted later, and I helped him with his autobiography, which told the story. And it turned out that a helical flash lamp was critical to that first laser, getting enough optical energy in there to get it to laser. Anyway, Manfred, thank you very much for that talk.